Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. We're starting a vlog, a 24-hour vlog. I miss vlogging. So for this 24-hour vlog, we are just doing straight up mood reading. I just want to read what I want to read. I don't want to do a themed vlog right now. I tend to lose steam with themed vlogs. They're hard to do for me, but just like 24 hours, just like read whatever you want to read. Easy. We love that. So we're gonna do that. I am currently reading The Laughing Corpse by Laurell K. Hamilton. This is the second book in the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series. Anita Blake is an animator. She can bring people back from the dead to like talk to them about like will stuff, like who murdered you, like lawyer stuff, you know. But obviously some people want to raise the dead for like bad reasons, and we see that here. I will talk about this later. This will be a timed reading vlog, which means that I will have a timer. When I'm actively reading, I start the timer, and when I'm not actively reading, pause the timer. So what can I actually read in 24 hours, like straight through, not like a single day vlog. Sorry if I sound like a little frazzled. I just finished filming the Finally Fall book tag. That should be up way before this video goes up. For the Anita Blake book, I'm only on page like 32. I'm not that far along, so I will mostly be reading this entire novel for this vlog. And again, since it's a mood reading, I don't know what I'm gonna read next. I think the next book that I'm angling for, I'm not 100% sure though, is Heaven, the second volume in Heaven Official's Blessing, which I read during another 24-hour vlog, and I loved it. But for now, we're reading this. I'll talk more about this at a later date, or a later clip. Okay, bye. So I just finished reading The Laughing Corpse by Laurell K. Hamilton. This book, I'm giving it a 3-star. So she animates people for like normal reasons, but she does get propositioned at the beginning of the book to reanimate someone, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. It would require me to have like a greater sacrifice to do that, and she typically sacrifices like animals to reanimate the dead, but this would require a human, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And that's kind of where the story starts. I gave it 3 stars because the actual individual story for this book didn't really capture my attention. It was pretty like one-to-one who like the bad guy was. What I really love about urban paranormal fantasy series like the Mercy Thompson series, like Kay Daniels and stuff that I've talked about before, is how much I love our main character. And while I don't dislike Anita, I don't particularly get much from her or the relationships that she has with other folk. We see a little bit of them in this book, but I kind of wanted more, and I'm sure we'll get more considering what I've heard about the series as it goes on. But this one was okay. I gave it 3 stars. For the second book, this is how much time I have left, by the way. I was going to read the second book in Heaven Official's Blessing, but I did get a book in from my library that I've been wanting to read for quite some time because the holds are pretty lengthy, and it's Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 4th and final book. I think there's like a 0.5 somewhere in the series, but this is a 4th and final book in the Natural series, which I've always described as like YA Criminal Minds. In the series, we follow a group of teens who are naturally adept at certain skills that you typically teach law enforcement like many years to like master, but these teens kind of get it pretty quickly. Like we have someone who's very good at like facial body stuff, and we have profilers or teen profilers that are really good at profiling. It's a little far-fetched in terms of like its premise, but it's fun, and you know, Criminal Minds vibes, whatever. I love Criminal Minds despite how not great it is like in its real life application sometimes. This is the 4th and final book, and we're kind of getting into what really happened to our main character's mother, who at the beginning of the story we pretty much assume that she's dead because she was taken, and there's like a ton of blood where her kidnapping area was, wherever she was kidnapped. Never seen from again, and so yeah, can't really give too much plot here, but yeah, that's what I'll read next. It shouldn't take me too long because it's YA mystery thriller. It should go by fast. I'll check in when I have an update. But yeah, I have over 20 hours left, so I don't really feel like getting out of bed, but I did finish reading Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I hope I did tell you what that book was about. Like I hope I did say that in a past clip. I haven't started editing this vlog, but I'm sure I told you. Can't really talk too much about this book as far as plot, but basically we're wrapping up what really happened to our main character's mother, because she disappeared and we'd never know what happened to her. She doesn't know what happens to her, so whatever. This book was very frustrating. Just know that there's a murder cult that we've kind of known has existed for a few books now. Well, 2 books technically. A murder cult exists. So for some reason the author decided to introduce another cult that's like less murdery but still dangerous, and it's like it's getting kind of cluttered. A lot of characters were also thrown in to connect the dots here, and it felt like, and they were all fairly like important characters that were thrown in. Maybe like 5 to 10 characters were thrown in, and I was really confused. And not to be like rude or anything, but all these characters are from like middle of nowhere Oklahoma, so they all have very similar sounding names. So I was like, wait, who's Sean again? Who is Dane? Like, who are, like, I keep confusing characters because they're all from Oklahoma, you know. What else? There was like randomly thrown in like amnesia. Our main character Cassie, like I said before, doesn't remember what happens to her mother, or doesn't know what happens to her mother. She just disappears one day. But I guess conveniently she also doesn't remember her childhood, so random amnesia thrown in as well. Okay, and this not that important because I did kind of like him, but there is a little bit of a love triangle in books 1 and 2, and it gets solved in books 2, so it's not that big of a deal. I know some people really don't like love triangles, and that's okay, but it does technically get dealt with. And while I didn't love her choice, I didn't hate the other guy either. She chooses 1 instead of number 2, but I can see why she chose 1. He's very different than number 2, I get it. But then the author does this really funny thing where she makes 1, the guy that she chose, boring. He has absolutely nothing to add to the plot after book 2. He's there and he's kind of like a broody type, but he does nothing. And the funny thing is that she makes number 2, the guy that she didn't choose, is very important to the story. He irritates our main character. They banter a lot, and I'm like, why didn't she choose the other guy? This guy's obviously better for her. Not that I hate number 1, because number 1 had like a good story in book 1 and 2, but then he just becomes irrelevant. So what's the point? I had to move again because my arm was hurting. Anyways, also, there's some things that happen at the end that I don't like, and I don't want to spoil anything, but do you remember the ending of The Mist? That's too much. Okay, anyways, yeah, it was just not a great ending. And if I had to, I'd only probably want books 1 and 2. Like, if I ever wanted, like, physical copies, books 1 and 2. 3 was fine. It was more of a filler. But 4, the author had so much work. But for book 4, the author had to do so much work to address what happened to Cassie, our main character's mother, / let's talk about this death cult and have it dealt with. It was just a lot of work, and our author she did not handle it well, I don't think. Too much to do in this last book. I wrote a quick little summary of what I felt in my Goodreads, and the best way that I can describe it is like if you're watching your favorite show that started off so well. I like using Supernatural as an example because it's pretty popular, but Supernatural season 1 through 4 was really well done, and the showrunner Eric Kripke had a clear idea of where the story was going to go in seasons 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 was fine as well, but 1 through 4 were very clearly planned out a certain way, and everything felt well done. Narratives, plot lines, and everything were addressed. However, now compare seasons 1, 2, 3, or 4 of Supernatural to like seasons 12 or whatever. It feels very like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy. It was a little hectic. That's the vibe. I'm gonna get up and choose the next book I'm gonna read. I think this might be a vlog for, what was the first book I read? A sequel. Oh, this is the vlog of sequels. I know it's like technically like mood reading, but I'm in the mood to read sequels, so I know exactly what I'm gonna pick. I'll be back. The next book we're gonna read is Heaven Official's Blessing, the second volume by Xiang, Tong. MXTX. If you're unfamiliar with the series, I read the first book in another vlog and I really enjoyed it. Hi everyone. So I was looking back at the footage and I didn't really like how I explained this book, the second volume of Heaven Official's Blessing. I didn't like how I explained it before, so sorry for the weird cut. To clarify, this is the second volume of Heaven Official's Blessing. So yeah, this is a wuxia / shansha novel. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm not very good with the tones in Mandarin, but like martial arts fantasy kind of, and shansha specifically because this deals with more of like the supernatural stuff. That's how I understand it. This is the first time I've read anything like that of that genre, so bear with me. In this book we follow a man named Xiang. In his mortal life he was the son of an emperor, and even as a mortal he was really well respected. A lot of people kind of like talked about how amazing this guy was. In his mortal life he was very dedicated to like cultivation and like Taoist beliefs, so much so that he eventually ascended into like the heavenly realm. Like he ascended, and this is like the goal for a lot of people who practice like cultivation and stuff. As a heavenly official he was even more well respected, and a lot of people like thought he was an amazing person, whatever, until something happened and he was kicked out of the heavenly realm, which is not good. That really doesn't happen too often, and that was bad for him. And then he ascended for the second time, even more rare. That also does not happen often. That lasted all about like 5 minutes, and then he gets kicked out again, like literally 5 minutes later. At this point he's kind of like a joke, laughing stock, doesn't have very good luck. He's not like a god of luck or anything. And then he ascends for the third time. At this point there's no one else like him in the heavenly realm, but he's trying to make this third ascension stick. So he's been doing like things, trying to collect what's the word, merits, I think is what they're called. He doesn't even have a shrine dedicated to him. Other like martial gods and civil gods have shrines dedicated to them where mortals pray to them. He doesn't have one. He has like one that he has to like build for himself. It's really, I thought this was going to be a little bit more of a grimmer story, but it's not. It's actually kind of comedic at sometimes. But our main character goes out on these tasks that the heavenly emperor asked him to do. On one of these tasks he meets a man called Xiang, who may or may not be one of the 4 ghost kings. This is pretty obvious from the get-go. It's not a spoiler. He may be one of the 4 ghost kings of the ghostly realm or whatever. And this is a Danmei novel, which is Chinese BL, male romance. This was originally published online by a Chinese author, and it's been translated into English. Very popular. I'm about 100 pages in. I don't know when I'll finish it. I might get a tooth extracted today, so I will update later. I did end up finishing the second novel of Heaven Official's Blessing, but before I get into it, I will be honest, it's been like a little over 2 weeks since I first started the vlog. Not since I last finished a book, but it's been a while. This vlog is taking a little while, and that's because in general it does take me a little over a week to do a 24-hour vlog. You would think it's like, oh, it's 24 hours, just read for 24 hours. Yeah, it does take a little bit, but I did get a tooth removed, one of my bicuspids, and it sucked really bad. I am still taking medication for it. I am currently like on a antibiotic. I am taking like a really strong ibuprofen that I had to get prescribed, and then a Tylenol. So it was a lot. And I was kind of like in bed, kind of in and out of consciousness for like 2 to 3 days. A funny thing did happen. While I was on medication, I decided to start writing fanfic again, which I haven't done in 15 years. I think the last fic I wrote was probably like something Twilight, and it was probably really bad. And I just sat down mid medication, like medication haze or whatever, and I wrote like about 5k words, and that's something that I can't stop thinking about the fic, and I kind of want to finish it, but or just continue with it, because I don't even know if I'll put it up. Which, by the way, my fic, what I read, what I write, that's between me and God. But I did end up just finishing this like an hour ago. I really enjoyed it. I gave it like 4 out of 5 stars. In this book, we got a lot more backstory of our main character, where he comes from, who was he really before he ascended for the first time, and then we also got more interactions between our main character and Xiang, who is one of like the 4 ghost kings or whatever. Their relationship is so, at this point, incredibly sweet, and it's like very much like, oh, like that's so cute at the moment, but it is going to be a slow burn, probably, obviously. I'm in book 2 and they haven't really done anything overtly romantic or anything, but it's very sweet, very adorable. I would say this is like, if you've never read Chinese BL Danmei or whatever, this might be a good place to start, but there was a little bit of a learning curve for me because I've never read wuxia, martial arts, fantasy, or anything like that, so that was a little tough. But these particular translated editions from Seven Seas Press, they do have like a glossary and like notes and stuff to kind of help understand the genre a little bit, and there's also like a character list and stuff to help you remember. I would suggest not spending time between volumes 1 and 2. They pretty much just continue on. I think volume 1 ends and then volume 2 picks up maybe like a few days later. So yeah, it's still very witty. I'm not like dying laughing in a corner or anything, but it's still very light and funny, and I do kind of laugh. This is very loud. I had a little trouble deciding what to read next because this is partly mood reading, but I also do want to, like, I'm also in the mood for sequels, and the sequels that I have on my shelf weren't calling out to me. But there's one sequel that I do want to read, and it's not a physical book that I own. It is an ebook that I got recently. It is the second book, and I think it's called the Legacy of Magic series by Lindsay Buroker, who I've read from before. I've read a couple of her books already. She writes really fast and she publishes very fast. She has a lot of books, and a lot of her books are actually like free to read, I want to say. This series, I think the first book is called Hammered. I'm not sure what the second book is called, but I'll put a picture right here. This series is technically a sequel series, but I wasn't really interested in the original series. I just picked up the sequel series because it seemed interesting. And in the series, we follow a young woman who is half human, half dwarf, which I've never read dwarven woman main character. And she is like a house flipper, I think, something along those lines. Dwarves are still very handy people, technologically advanced people, so she flips houses with like a couple friends, and then she kind of gets involved in this thing. It's like those urban paranormal stories that I mentioned earlier that I really enjoy. I love the main character. She's really fun. She's very tough. Also has like mom trauma, which seems to be a thing in some of these books that I'm reading in this vlog. It's really fun. I enjoyed it. There's also like an elf who may or may not be like annoying her / might be her love interest. I know I'm not selling it well, but it's like an urban paranormal. If you've ever read like a Sookie Stackhouse, Kate Daniels, Mercy Thompson, Anita Blake, stuff like that, it's kind of in this like a similar formula. Just depends if you like the main character, which I do. I actually really fell in love with her just like in one book. I think that's gonna be what I read next, what I pick up next. It is an ebook, and I really wanted to focus on physical books, but I just want to go where the mood takes me, so that is what I'm gonna read next. I hope Pugsley behaves. I think that's it. Don't get a tooth extracted unless you have to. It sucks, but you might just get the urge to start writing fan fiction again after 15 years. So this is also how much time I have left. I forgot to show you. So I did finish the second book in the Legacy of Magic series, which was called Betrayed, and I really enjoyed it. I kind of knew I was gonna give it like 4 stars like within the first few chapters, because I love the main character. I love the banter between her and the love interest. The story was fun too. I really have no notes. I'm giving it a 4-star because nothing like super like blew me away, to be honest, but it was still really fun. It was exactly what I wanted, and like having a good time, and it's gotten better since the last one, I feel, because we're like now in the swing of things. We're getting reveals about our main character's mother and like what happened to her, all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed it. I know that doesn't say much not much of a critique or anything. It's urban paranormal, you know what I mean? If you've read one before, you know what you like, that kind of thing. As for what I'll read next, I don't really know. I'm glad that I've been reading sequels to series. Continuing series is like something that I like fail miserably at, because I just want to keep reading different worlds, different stories and stuff. Let's see, what should I read? I recently got this book and I think I'll pick it up. It sounds like something that could be fun and kind of like, you know, Sanctuary Bay. I think this was in my last book haul. Yeah, it's about a girl who goes to a prep school. I think she's like an orphan, or she's like in the foster system or something along those lines. And so she goes to a prep school. She finally makes friends or something, and then one of the girls that she meets disappears. Something like that. I've never heard of this book or these authors, so I keep forgetting to show times. This is the time I have left, so a little less than 9 hours, so maybe 2 more books I can squeeze in. So I lied in the last clip. After I filmed that clip, I got bored and I was like, let me look through Libby and see if there's anything that I want to read, either for this vlog or just like in general. And I found the second book in the Arrows of the Queen series by Mercedes Lackey. This is like the first thing that she wrote in that series, Voldemort. I don't know what it's called, but I have the book right here. This is the second book. Like I said before, I've been wanting to read sequels, continue series, that kind of thing. And when I saw this one on my library app, I picked it up. I really like the first one. This is a fantasy that was originally published in the late 80s, written by a woman, and I'm always interested in reading books like that that fit that criteria. I really like the first one. I gave it like 3.5 stars because it didn't blow me away, but I did have like a lot of fun reading it. It was very reminiscent of Tamora Pierce's work, who was also a woman who published fantasy in the 80s with like predominantly like female characters. In this book series, the first one, we follow Talia, who is grown up in a fairly like puritanical, like Christian coded society where women are like second class compared to men, and she's expected to marry a man like and have like a ton of children, even if the man is like super old or whatever. That's like what's expected of her, and she's like, absolutely not, I'd rather run away. So she runs away, and while she's like she doesn't make it that far before she like passes out and has like a vision of a companion. And companions are essentially like magical horses that are a bit smarter, and they're a little more than just like an average horse. And companions choose people to become heralds of the realm, of the kingdom, and they're essentially in charge of like everything. They like enforce laws, they protect people, they're like good knights, I guess. Some heralds like become more like scholars. I think some can become like bards or whatever. They do everything. And yeah, except that the companion that chooses our main character Talia is the companion that was previously partnered with the Queen's own herald, which is like the most important one. The Queen's own, or the king, but right now there's a queen. The Queen's own herald is like the Queen's advisor, or one of her advisors, so it's a very important position. Talia's very young, so she obviously has to come into it, but she still has to like take classes and stuff, but she's also technically has a very important role in this kingdom already. So yeah, it's very much like chosen one, old school 80s like fantasy. Something that really stuck out to me when I first read it was that there's sapphic relationships. Heralds are described as like hedonistic. They don't really form long-lasting relationships. There are some that do, but for the most part it's like not common, because the most important bond that they will ever create in their life is the bond that they have with their companion, their horse. So this is truly like a book for the horse girls. So yeah, I really enjoyed the first one, and I wanted to read the second one. I'm at about 8 hours, so I'll finish this book and then probably have one more to go. The first chapter of this book kind of had like a recap of what happened in book 1, which is great because it's not like it's been a while, and I do remember quite a bit from the first one, but that's always nice to have like a recap chapter. What else? I think that's it. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I lied in the last clip. So I did finish Arrow's Flight, which is the second book in the the Heralds of Voldemort series by Mercedes Lackey. I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5, but I know exactly the type of reader that isn't gonna like this fantasy. This would definitely get the critique that nothing happens, boring, middle book syndrome. But let me explain the plot of this without like giving too much away, if you haven't read the first book. Essentially in this book, Talia has been like a herald trainee for quite some time now. Some time has passed, maybe like a year or so. I'm not 100% sure of like the time jump since the last book. And so she's going on her internship in this book, and that basically means that she and like an elder herald who's kind of like already like kind of done his training will be her mentor for like about a year, and they'll go to like a specific sector in the kingdom to like look over that part for about a year. Basically there isn't really like a big bad like evil like wizard they have to defeat, or like a civil war. So it's very like low-key. I think if you go into this book with like more of like an expectation of like coming of age, like finding yourself in the world, dealing with like self-doubt, I think you'll have a much better experience. I was writing down my like notes in my like book journal or whatever, that if it wasn't for some of the darker elements of the story, I would consider this more cozy fantasy. But there are like death, there is mentions of sewer slide ideation, SAR word, children passing away, some darker stuff. So it's not quite cozy, but it's like almost there. That's kind of the vibe of this book, and I really liked it, but some people did not. I looked at reviews, like again it gets like the boring critique, which I totally get. It's very much not like the fantasy that gets published nowadays. Again, this is the 80s, and I also wrote this in my notes that a lot of it kind of feels reminiscent of Tamora Pierce, but I don't know if that's because that is what was popular in the 80s. I'd have to read more before I give like a definitive like vibe, but like I get similar, there's similarities between Tamora Pierce's early work and these two books I've read from the series so far. So yeah, something that I really enjoy, something that I don't see a lot in fantasy, and it's not the most important thing in the series so far, is the kind of openness in sexuality that heralds have. I mentioned before, I hope I did, that the bond that heralds will have with their companion is going to be the most important thing with that horse. And they even mention it in kind of passing in this book, how there was an individual that they know, I forgot who was chosen to be a herald later in life. Like he got his companion later in life when he was already married and had a kid, and once he made that bond with that companion, he kind of realized that like his marriage is like will never compare to the bond that he has with his horse. And it was a very hard thing for him to go through, but it's all for the best. His ex-wife went on to have like a whole different life, whatever. So that's something that they emphasize. So things like long-lasting relationships are very rare, and heralds typically have short, physical relationships with other heralds, because they understand that bond with their companions can be the most important thing. So with that in mind, you have Talia, who is like essentially like going out of her home for the first time. She doesn't consider her childhood home her real home. She considers the school that she's gone to like her real home. She's away from home for the first time on her internship. I think of it as like college. When you go off to college for the first time, that's kind of the vibe that Talia's going through. You do have that open and sexuality from her in this book, and I think people are gonna dislike that openness because it kind of feels like there's gonna be a love triangle, but also because of the hedonistic ways of heralds, it's also not gonna be, or it really shouldn't. It's a side plot, not a big deal, but I really enjoyed it. I don't know if other readers will. This romantic elements, and again I use that lightly because of what I just explained, it just feels very different than the way romantic elements get thrown into fantasy stories nowadays. And again, it just feels refreshing. I don't know if there's going to be like a big bad to this series. Like, I don't know if the author is going to throw in like a random like a major threat, though I do kind of have a sense of like some of the conflict that's coming up. It doesn't, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I really enjoyed this kind of like subtler fantasy in this book. There's a lot of themes of like self-doubt and self-destruction, and I don't know if the author was trying to kind of make a connection or kind of reference the mental struggles that Talia is going through with like the mental struggles that we go through in our lives, but that is a big part of the story. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. This is the time that I have left for the video. I already know what I'm gonna read, and I hope I really enjoy it, because this is a type of book that I don't want to read like a ton of consecutively. It is also a sequel. We're continuing on with the theme. It is Glory and Death by J.D. Robb. This is the second book in the In Death series by Nora Roberts, who writes under J.D. Robb. I don't know if she uses that pen name for anything else other than the In Death series, but I read the first book. I thought it was interesting and, you know, kind of that very relaxing, like procedural type of book. It is a little propaganda, but it does take place in like the near future, and I do think that Nora Roberts did something interesting with society and policing with some of the choices she made in this like near future series. There's also like a romance and stuff, you know, it's very that vibe. It is like the urban paranormals that I love, but this one's like more sci-fi leaning than like paranormal, near future kind of tech and that kind of stuff. The first one was a little graphic though. I don't know what the second book is going to be, but here it is. I don't know the details of this one, but I'll just like go in blind, and I'm sure it'll be a quick read. So yeah, that's what I'm reading next. I don't know how long this will take me to read. I have an idea of like what I might do to like waste the rest, or to go what I read in the last bits of this vlog. Maybe not an entirely new book, but I was thinking of maybe picking up manga again, because I've been wanting to try the Viz app, which I think is like a $1.99 subscription for like a month, which is crazy. And so I might read manga to like finish up the series after I'm done with Glory and Death. So we will get to that when we get to that. So I did finish the second book in the In Death series by J.D. Robb, also known as Nora Roberts, and it was fine. It was just fine. I gave it like a 2.5, like right in the middle. It's not bad. It didn't blow me away. It's a standard like cop procedural type book. There's a mystery. Our main character solves the mystery, and we're done. Maybe later on in the series the author like adds in some interesting like story arcs or something, which would make it, you know, more exciting, but it's just fine right now. I'm mostly intrigued, or I get more into the story when we see Eve, our main character, and the growing relationship between her and her love interest Rourke, and it seems like something major for them is happening soon, so that's fun. But for the most part, it's just fine. This is definitely a series that I don't think I could like binge. Like I want to binge like Patricia Briggs, or I want to binge the author that I read earlier in the vlog, Lindsay Buroker. I want to binge all her books right now. This is a book that I would pick up where I'm like, I don't know what to read, but I want to read something, so I'll just pick up this because I know exactly what I'm going to get, and hopefully my mood reading would get better after reading something like this. And yeah, it's fine. It's just fine. I literally wrote that in my like review or like my book journal. It's fine. It's okay. I don't have much time left. Let me show you. I have about 45 minutes left, and if it was anything shorter than like 10 minutes I'd be like, we'll end the vlog there, but 45 minutes is enough to get some things done. And I've been really wanting to read manga. I've been wanting to catch up / reread some of the manga from Skip Beat. This is the second omnibus of Skip Beat. It has volumes 4, 5, and 6. I have the first 4 omnibuses, and that's all I've read. I've read everything from volume 1 to 12, I want to say, and I really enjoy this one, and I want to pick it back up again because I don't know, I really like it. This manga follows this young woman named Kyoko, I believe, and she travels to Tokyo with her best friend / the guy that she absolutely loves to help his dream of being a J idol come true. He wants to be like super famous, an actor, singer, whatever, and she's gonna do everything that she can to like help support his dreams, pay for an apartment. She has multiple jobs to like keep him like, you know, afloat, and she does that so selflessly. And then one day she overhears that he doesn't really think highly of her. He talks down to her, he talks bad about her behind her back, he makes fun of her, mocks her. And when she finds out, she quickly, instead of like crying and mourning that friendship, she goes to anger. Like anger is like her natural response to all this, and she thinks the best way to get revenge against this boy that she loved is for her to become a J idol and become even more famous than he is. So anyways, it is a pretty fun campy story, a lot of hijinks, kind of ridiculous premise, but that's, you know, manga for you. Really funny. I enjoyed it. Like I said, I only read like the first like 12 volumes, and I want to say that there's like over 40, like minimum over 40 out so far, and I'm like this close to getting like the Viz app. Let me know if you use that app, because I want to, and I hear it's like really cheap, so that's probably how I'll get to read more manga. There's not a lot of like places to get manga locally where I live, so that's what I'm thinking. And for the last 45 minutes, I think I'm gonna start over and read volumes 1 through 3. I have those volumes over there, but this is the one that I could reach. I will read what I can, and I will wrap up the vlog once the time is up. So okay, so the time is up. I finished the 24 hours. Let us quickly go through what I read before I close off this video. So for the last 45 minutes, I only got to read the first volume of Skip Beat by Yoshiki Nakamura. Like I said before, I love this series. I think it's so fun, it's so entertaining. Upon reading it again for the first time and seeing or remembering where Kyoko starts out, it's a little like secondhand embarrassment, like cringy, because she's not good at anything. She's not talented, but she wants to be an idol. She can't sing, she can't act, she can't dance. She literally goes into the audition, which is tough for her to get on audition in the first place, and she's like, I just want to get revenge on this guy that hurt me. And everyone's like, what? But it's still really fun, really entertaining, so definitely happy that I started this again. I personally haven't really decided as for like a rating for our manga, since I don't get to read as much as I used to, but I guess maybe like a 4 out of 5. I don't know. The first thing that I did read in this vlog was The Laughing Corpse by Laurell K. Hamilton. It was fine. It's not super memorable in terms of an installment in the series. I vaguely remember the plot. It was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Maybe like something more like straight down the middle, 2.5 out of 5 would be more appropriate, but this is an okay like urban paranormal book. But I love the genre a lot, so I'm kind of biased that I'm like okay with some of these being like, oh, like fine. I don't know. And then the second thing that I finished was Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I still have problems with this installment in general. It's very like, let us tie up the loose ends, but like not in a good way. I feel like there's just a lot to do in this last book. For some reason, I feel like it could have been simplified, this particular plot. I talked before about my issues with it, like all the cult stuff and like some of the ending decisions. I don't know, didn't really love it. First 2 books were immaculate. The 3rd book was a little bit filler, but it was still good. 4th book, not the best. And then I read the 2nd book in Heaven Official's Blessing, the 2nd volume by MXTX. So good. This is so good. This is amazing. I'm so glad that I finally like picked up some like Dawn May stuff, some translated works. I really love this, and definitely I've been wanting to pick up more from this particular author, and I know other works that have been under the like 7 Seas publishing, so I love this one. I think I'm good with like a 4 out of 5. Then I read Betrayed by Lindsay Buroker. I love this installment. This one was so fun, so like interesting, exciting. I was having like such a good time, like giggling and laughing, and like some of like the heartwarming moments between her, our main character Maddie, and her love interest. So good, so fun. This is like a great urban paranormal fantasy that I love. Definitely gonna keep reading the series like sooner rather than later. Like this one's like more towards the front of my priority, and like something like the Anita Blake series is kind of in the back burner because starting out not so great, whereas this one pretty good. And then after that, I think I read Arrows to Light by Mercedes Lackey. I enjoyed this one, but like I said before, I can see why others might not. Definitely going to continue the series and more from this author because I do know that she writes a lot of books in this particular universe, so that's good for me. I always have something else to read now. And then of course I recently wrapped up Glory and Death by J.D. Robb. Again, it's just an okay book. It's fine. Not a big deal. It's like whatever. So yeah, that is the vlog. I didn't go into this expecting to read like sequels or like next installments in the series. It was mostly like mood reading, but I guess my mood was to read sequels, so that's great for me. I accomplished something. And I read a couple of things. How much was it? Like one. So I read like 6 things and a manga volume, so that's great for me. I'm still nowhere close to my Goodreads goal, but that's okay. The year's gonna end and it's fine. It goes on. So feel free to talk to me down below in the comments about anything that I've talked about. I'd like to hear anything you have to say down below. I will also link my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Do you want to say goodbye?